Hey. Lots of things happening these days, people, and we are going to get right to it. Welcome back, everyone, to Real Talk with Mochio. I am your host, Gordon A. Mochio, the G-Man, they call me. And today we are going to be discussing several issues of interest. But before we begin, the views, opinions, and statements expressed on Real Talk with Mochio are those of the host and guests of the podcast and do not necessarily reflect the views, opinions, or official positions of Gordon Vincent Associates, LLC, DBA Mochio Media, or any of its subsidiaries, affiliates, or employees. And folks, before we begin, as I do before embarking upon any great undertaking, I thank my Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ, for giving me the opportunity to share some time with you. Folks, today, I'd like to begin by discussing a headline that's been really all over the place, and the mainstream media on both the right and the left have been getting a lot of mileage out of this one, and that is crime, especially murder, is at a 100-year low. Now, folks, this analysis is based upon crime data from 40 major U.S. cities with a population between 180,000 to 8.3 million. Some of you may be thinking, great, things are finally turning around. Others may be thinking, that doesn't seem to be the case in my community or my city. For those of you thinking the latter, that it doesn't match what you've been seeing, allow me to explain. That's because the report was based upon the National Crime Index and does not include lower-level crimes and quality of life issues that municipalities face every day. Crimes like low-level drug possession, public drug use, criminal mischief, minor theft, shoplifting, and something that's very popular these days, especially around holiday time, package theft, and so on. Now, low-level crimes are not part of the National Crime Index, or they're not reported to the National Crime Index, but they absolutely, positively shape how safe your community feels, or how you feel in your community or city. So, for those of you who don't know, allow me to explain what index crimes are. There are 8 categories of crimes that make up the index. Now, please, bear with me. This is a little lengthy, but hang in there. Believe me, it's a great education. The first is murder, manslaughter. Of course, the intentional killing or fatalities resulting from the commission of a felony, fights or arguments, or the use of may involve the use of a weapon or deadly physical force. Forcible rape, sexual intercourse against a person by force or threat of force. Robbery, the taking or attempting to take anything of value from a person by force, threat, or intimidation. Burglary, an unlawful entry into a structure to commit a crime. Aggravated assault, an unlawful attack for the purpose of inflicting serious bodily injury, usually involving the use of a weapon or dangerous instrument, and usually involving, as I said, serious physical injury. Larceny, the unlawful taking of property without force. Motor vehicle theft, the theft or attempted theft of a motor vehicle. And lastly, arson, a willful or malicious burning or attempted burning of property. So, now that I've outlined the 8 categories of index crime, let's take a look at how these crimes are reported. In the old days, when I was on the job, uniform crime reporting was the flavor of the day. Now, today, they use something called incident-based reporting, which happened to come in just about, well, maybe a year or so before I retired. Now, back to uniform crime reporting, or UCR as they used to call it. UCR is no longer the standard, and here's why. Under this outdated format, everything was summary-based. Only the most serious offense per incident was counted. And that was known as, back then, the hierarchy rule. So, if the crime was robbery, and the robbery included other factors such as a simple assault, drug possession, only the robbery counted. Everything else disappeared statistically, which created structural loopholes and loopholes in the reporting system. Yet another issue, in theory, municipalities or police agencies for that matter could give the impression that crime was down by classifying borderline crimes in a way that it did not hit the index. For example, a motor vehicle theft, depending on the circumstances, could be coded as an unauthorized use. Robbery could be coded as a larceny. Even a burglary could be classified as a criminal trespass, again, depending on the circumstances. Now, enter incident-based reporting, the current standard. Under incident-based reporting, every offense is recorded. No hierarchy rule. Weapons, injuries, victim statements, relationships, and circumstances are all logged. So you can't structurally bury serious crime anymore. Mistakes still can be made, but you can't theoretically cook the books the way you could under uniform crime reporting or UCR. So, let's get back to why people may not feel safer. Or, yeah, I guess safer is the word. This is where the disconnect happens. Folks, crime is local. It always has been, always will be. Averages don't reflect personal experiences. So when the headlines report the national crime is the lowest it's been since 1900, people need to understand where they're getting those numbers from, or they will stop believing and lose trust, which can affect how they vote, especially in the midterms. Speaking about the midterms, now that you have a better understanding of the facts, it is important that you turn out for the midterm elections. Oh, so important, ladies and gentlemen, if you want to keep this this trend in declining crime going. Let's discuss for a moment the Biden era crime spike that everyone seems to forget about. Folks, criminals loved the hands-off, hear no evil, speak no evil, and see no evil posture of the Biden administration. And practically every Democrat-run administration that I can remember. As a result, cities who employ that philosophy saw 30 to 50% increases in crime. Why? Doesn't take a rocket scientist. The woke policies, cashless bail, defund the police rhetoric. You know, the defund police rhetoric, it fuels criminal behaviors. Then you have soft on crime DAs, non-prosecution policies, early release, reduced sentencing, and of course, my favorite, the open borders of the Biden administration. Remember when Uncle Joe stated that he had done all he could regarding the border, and now it was up to Congress to act? Well, Trump certainly proved that not to be the case, didn't he? Folks, the coddling philosophy of the left fails miserably every time. When criminals believe there are no consequences, crime spikes. Again, this isn't politics. This is an accepted fact. Now, for the criminals, it was like taking candy from a baby. Folks, I cannot emphasize enough. For the criminal justice system to be effective, you need two things. The punishment must be swift and proportionate to the level of crime committed. So, neither has been true for many years. Only now, under the Trump administration, is the tide starting to change. Let's take a look. Trump takes office in 2025. Crime takes a plunge. Folks, crime didn't lower itself. It happened because of the policies of the Trump administration. Under the Trump administration, Trump placed qualified, no-nonsense, rule-of-law people in key positions. CIA, FBI, DOJ, Attorney General, Homeland Security, Border Patrol, and Immigration and Customs Enforcement. The Biden-era leftovers were replaced with a new proactive posture was spawned. The Trump administration also put forth certain anti-crime operations such as Operation Legend, Operation Relentless Pursuit. They increased task force activity. There were more federal-state coordination and funding. They targeted violent offenders and were aggressive in pursuing them. Folks, this type of philosophy, if you will, sends a clear message to the bad actors. Criminal behavior will not be tolerated. Criminals will be punished. Repeat offenders will not be coddled. Prosecutors will not be sidelined. Police will receive the full backing of the administration and government. And bail reform will be challenged. When criminals believe there are real consequences and timely consequences, behavior changes. That's not ideology, folks. That's one of the main tenets of criminology. So yes, thank you to the Trump administration, and a big thank you to our brave men and women in law enforcement. So now let's move on to the border and violent crime. You cannot ignore the border. You cannot ignore fentanyl or fentanyl trafficking. You cannot ignore cartel activity. You cannot ignore gang migration. You cannot ignore illegal firearms flow. And folks, when you lose border control, you increase the potential for crime exponentially. Vetting. The left sure likes to ride that word. Well, some on the right do as well. Folks, let's be honest. For many of the people crossing the border right now, proper vetting is not possible. Folks, you cannot run meaningful background checks on individuals coming from countries that don't maintain reliable government records, or from countries that are not part of any international record-sharing system or database. And yes, folks, that includes places like Somalia, where there is no functioning national database, no standardized criminal history system, and no dependable way to verify identities. So, when politicians tell you these people are being fully vetted, that's not reality, that's not marketing. That's BS. Under the Biden administration, large numbers of migrants were admitted under parole programs and mass processing policies. Meaning, we don't have time to process these people. We can't process all these people. Let's just let them in. Without meaningful background verification, beyond name checks and limited biometric screening, we can't control what's coming into our country or who's coming into our country. And folks, when you see these people crossing the borders with their grandmas, grandpas, sons, daughters, they know exactly what's going on, and the mainstream media loves how to play that up. And they want us to be compassionate. They want us to feel. Folks, letting these people in without proper vetting is not compassion. It's negligence, pure and simple. And let me be clear. From my perspective, this is not about race. This is not about nationality. This is not about demonizing immigrants. This is about basic public safety and the sovereignty of our nation. Folks, you can't vet what cannot be verified. You cannot background check a record that doesn't exist. And pretending otherwise is how you lose control of your border and crime. So, here's the honest bottom line. Yes, murders are declining. That's real, and that's good. And it didn't happen by accident. It happened because law enforcement was once again empowered. Prosecutors started prosecuting again. Repeat offenders were taken off the street again. Border enforcement was restored again. Laws matter. Policy matters. Public safety matters. And you matter, my friends. This has been Real Talk with Mochio, enlightening, educational, and always telling it like it is, Mochio style. Until we meet again, folks, may the blessings of heaven rest upon you and yours.